Well, I mean, I want to get back to the boomers.
Yeah,
Because
let's talk about the boomers.
I they astound me. And even the good ones like Jordan Peterson or whatever, they're still boomers, right? It's just like there's no escaping it. I've never met a boomer who's not a boomer. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like
so what? Yeah, what?
the most based
Yeah, go
boomer,
ahead.
like the most based boomers, are still boomers, and there's no transcending that. It's like their identity, like their identity is being anti-racist, like it's ingrained in their DNA or something. There's like this whole, Valerie Plam, that thing that was going on, and it's like.
Now, how old is she? She's a boomer.
I don't know. I don't think she's a boomer, but there were boomers talking about it on Twitter, and
Right. Yeah.
Sebastian Gorka was like, "Wow, like the left is the real anti-Semites," or something like that. It's like I don't know. Like there's something like they just like they're unable. Like when it comes to certain things, like they're just unable to have an argument, and that's a generality like that you can make about them, and they're not able to. Yeah, they're just not able to think about certain things critically, as a whole, like as a group of people, as a generation.
Do you remember what she said? She was like,
She retweeted this
Jews
article.
can.
Yeah, she retweeted this article that was like America's Jews run America's wars, or something of
Oh
his
yeah.
is
Okay.
this unz.com article. Just basically was saying like, well, Jews have they kind of have mixed loyalties when it comes to Middle Eastern foreign policy. So maybe they should recuse themselves. It's like, yeah, like I get that's such a simple argument, and it's like if our like Central American diplomats, like all the people in charge of Central America foreign policy, were like El Salvadorans. Like nobody would accept that. Like, like that would be so obvious. Like, yeah, like you don't do that. It's good. They're going to be biased. But when it's Jews, it's like, oh no, we have to
Yeah, and
attack.
then Trump had this tweet today about oh, Iran, they have missiles that are in range of Israel, and oh, I thought we had a deal or something like that, like bad agreement. So, very very typical boomer stuff and pro Israel, and sort of implying like, if you mess with uh yeah, if you mess with Israel, you mess with the U.S. Bucko. And
Yeah.
I told somebody on Twitter, like, oh, he said to me, yeah, isn't it basically like Israel is a colony of America? And I said, I think it's more like America's a colony of Israel.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, yeah, yeah. Israel is in charge of America's foreign policy, and that's really not um, wrong. Like if you want to have an argument with someone about whether or not that's true, I mean, very easily you can prove that it's true. Um, it's just, and obviously, like that's what you were seeing on Twitter. Like nobody ever rebutted what this Plam lady um, was saying. It was just like, wow, I can't even. Are you serious? Are you kidding me? Like, oh, anti-Semitism, and then reported, and the alt-right is the CIA or something, and all of that. And it's like, okay, well, none of that is an argument. What she said is still completely true. So
She touched the third rail. Everybody, you know what to do. Attack, attack.
and it's like, no, actually, like, this is kind of what I think our generation is about. That's what I want it to be more like. Is um, let's just be honest with each other, as honest as we can, while still having good boundaries, and let's figure out what the truth actually is, and let's start from there. Like, um, if whenever you see some comment about, a certain group doing something, and then you recoil and you attack, and like you're actually not interested in facts. You're, the definition of a bigot. Like, you see some group being mentioned in whatever way, and you get an emotional reaction, and then you don't process arguments. And I'm not saying like the left is the bigots or the right is the bigots. It's just like boomers. They're not capable of processing arguments. Like, they get too triggered. So I think, yeah, like, we just have to, know who our audience is, and the boomers, they're gonna go away at some point.
They are, but they're here now, and I think, well, I mean, you can deal with them. There's certain ways you can, like stoke their ego or something like that. But I think I'm just interested in, like, how did this happen? I maybe it had something to do with like their parents, came home from World War II, and I don't know, maybe there was all this, trauma and patriotism and probably PTSD to some degree, but also the high of, winning, like, and so I guess just in their minds, everything was just perfect, and I mean, it certainly was better. You can find ways that it was objectively better than it is today. But, obviously it wasn't perfect because we ended up where we are today. So there was, I think this false reckoning, it's like, okay, we've defeated, Nazism and fascism, and it's like now, America's without a doubt the best country in the world, and anybody, we can just have our way with people. And I think that sort of attitude, like, it tied everybody together, and it didn't allow for the possibility that there could be an element from within, like the Trojan horse that comes and dismantles things from within. And so they were completely oblivious. Like, they just had no idea to even look at that. And then you had the Cold War, so they had all this other, like, when they were coming of age, essentially they were they had this other experience where they were on alert all the time, and gotta look out for the Russians, and so I think some of the, like, triggering that happens today, I think it's fair to say that it's like the trauma playing out, sort of, or maybe not trauma, they're false perceptions of and false assurances, just because, like, once you knock down that domino, like, the whole thing falls apart. And then like, I think maybe if they had to say their fear, I think it would be sort of like, well, if I admit that there are certain, elements of tribal race that, is good, that the groups should identify with each other or with your own group, then that's just going to unravel this whole string, and then everything that I believe will just come apart, and everything that we did that was good in the country will just be for naught. And I suppose that's true, although, you know, it's like there were some objectively good things like in the 50s, but again, it's like the boomers didn't earn that. You know, they didn't fight the war. They didn't fight that, you know, that great war. It's sort of like they went on and they had Vietnam, right? But Vietnam was a farce. It was not noble. And now you can argue World War II wasn't noble either, but we have this narrative that everyone thinks it was. Like, that's the Great War. So, yeah, I guess, I don't know. Do you think I'm empathizing too much with our
I mean,
friends?
definitely, like, at some point, you know, boomers were just helpless children, and they were raised in this world that was very different from the world that we had before, you know, like before World War II, and, you know, before World War I even, like, and I do believe, like, the boomers were the first generation to be raised with, you know, working moms, basically. You know, after, you know, during the World War, you had all these women being put in the workforce and, you know, building bombs and all kinds of crap. And after the war, that didn't really end. Like, that never really went back to normal, where you know, the gender roles were strictly enforced. And I think, you know, that there, of course, like, there's a lot of aspects that go into it, but I would think, like, that definitely would have produced, you know, if their moms were working, like, that would have produced a lot of, like, feelings of alienation. And you know, when you're alone and you don't have parents around you, like, you don't develop empathy, really. So, like, I mean, you know, I don't want to say that's the definite truth, and obviously, like, I don't have any proof for that, but it's like they definitely had a lot of challenges that other people didn't have before. But it's just that the way, you know, the way that they dealt with it, you know, with all this trauma that they had, is like they were cowardly about it. Like, they weren't honest. They didn't look into the real issues and say, you know what, like, this world war, like, really fucked our parents up, and this like, consumerist culture that makes women work, like, that was really bad for us. These public schools are a mess. Like, these, like, they didn't do that. Like, they were sold, or maybe they, you know, created this fiction that, like, well, if we just, you know, instead of saying, well, my boundaries were broken as a child, and I'm gonna, you know, resolve that in the next generation, we're gonna strengthen that, and we're gonna make that good. Like, they kind of started to believe, like, well, what if we just have no boundaries whatsoever? Then everything will work out fine. Like, we just, instead of having higher standards, let's have no standards for raising children. Let's have no standards for behavior in society. And, you know, that's why you had the hippies, and you had, you know, no fault divorce, and you had, you know, amnesty, and, you know, civil rights, and all of these things, right? Just kind of all coming at the same time. And, you know, some of that can be attributed to, you know, Jewish influence, but a lot of that is just, like, bad boundaries on the parts of the boomer generation, where, yeah, they messed up, you know. And now it's our job to kind of look back at that and do what they should have done, 50, 60 years ago, and just be honest with ourselves. And so, like, we're not going to have another communist revolution. We're going to have, a right-wing revolution, a self-knowledge revolution. And we're just going to drive at, this is what I want, is like just drive at the root of the issues, and then we can resolve them for good. Like if we can, teach philosophy to our kids, and teach them empathy, there's not going to be, I don't think, that desire to rebel and destroy everything that was there before, and start from scratch. And that's what I think, and I think that's if that can be done, I think that would be best, because we can't, if we fix things temporarily without self-knowledge, then 100 years from now, we're going to run into the same thing, but with better technology and more wealth, and then that might be it by that point.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot riding on it. Well, yeah, it does. It certainly feels right when you said the boomers just they lack this empathy. Yeah, I think when they hear something that they describe as racist, it might be sort of like trying to protect the mother. If I had to psychologize, that might be something. But I think that, yeah, this idea of empathy, especially for the future generations, right? And it's not to say that they don't talk about philanthropy or helping the kids, but the way there's not empathy is that they don't think about and evaluate what kids would actually want. Part of this is seen in you have to go to college, right? That mentality, and then also the national debt, right? That type of thing. Although that one should be pretty obvious. It's yeah, obviously your grandchildren aren't going to want to be burdened with hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt.
Yeah, and in the case of America, pretty obvious is circumcision. If you claim that you care so much about the kids, somebody's got to save the kids, and it's really, a lot of that is, I think it's concern trolling. It feels good to them, it feels good to them that they can signal, oh, I care so much, and I voted for this guy who's gonna boost school funding and whatever. It's
yep.
But what about circumcision? What about young boys being put on amphetamines when they start school? What about diverse schools? How about all of that? It's oh no, that's uncomfortable. No, right. Their supposed care ends where it becomes uncomfortable for them.
It's ridiculous. They're clearly not listening to what anybody else is saying. So I don't have much sympathy for them. They wanted power, they wanted control, they wanted wealth, and they got all of that. But like you say, they're gonna eventually lose that stuff. And yeah, I mean, beyond that, you know, if you put your identity in those things, if you put your identity in your career success or your reverse mortgage or you know, it's like, wow, that's really depressing. I just can't imagine living like that. And it's so short-sighted too, because they are coming to the point in their life where they're gonna want to have their, you know, kids around them. They're gonna want to have people who care for them, and they're just not gonna have the power anymore. They're not gonna have the numbers. That's another thing too, is like baby boomers. So, you know, they are part of this. There's a lot of them. I think that actually plays into the psychology of it. It's like, wow, yeah, there's so many of us, and so all we're gonna do is just, you know, be competitive little robots and just, you know, march into the future, into this global multicultural utopia. So, yeah. Well, have we gotten too far off track? I mean,
no, I mean, I don't think so. No, I mean, it's all topical. You know, whenever it's like, yeah, like they have it pretty good. But you know, what happens when, you know, the government runs out of money? You know, after the way that they've treated us, like, do they really think like they're gonna get any money from us? Like any sympathy, any, you know, like when you look at the way, you know, it is on Twitter. So one of our guys of our generation is going to be like, wow, this diversity thing really sucks for these reasons. And then some boomer will say, oh no, it's great. Like, I get my lawn done for $5 or whatever. Like, whatever. Like, so right. Some, you know, illegal is going to mow my lawn for really cheap.
It's like, yeah, well, you're going to be dead in 20 years. So of course you don't care.
Yeah. And I mean, just like for, you know, karmic revenge, like I hope that the government does run out of money before they die. Just so that, like, they get to, like,
just so they can see what they did.
Yeah, like, so that they can,
right.
You know, they can have some kind of idea how badly they fucked us. I mean, it might not happen.
But would they? I don't know. Like, they're still just gonna deny it. Like, they're still just gonna say, I don't know. What would they do? They'd probably blame the opposite political party or something.
I mean, they were in charge of both. So, I mean, like, I can't.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
It's like, but... well, I mean, if they do that, you know, I really like this Molyneux argument. It's like, oh, so you're saying, like, you know, democracy didn't work. So that's why, you know, there's no money anymore. Okay, well, you know, then, you know, please be consistent while we get rid of democracy. And let's see if they'll go for that. And I just don't think they're curious enough to.
They'll do whatever they have to get their Social Security. I mean, hate to be cynical, but that's probably true. That would be perfect if like the government's about to issue all boomer checks at once, and then there's this massive default, and oh, sorry guys,
whoops.
That's not gonna happen. I don't think.
It'd be great for us, but yeah, it's kind of a dream. Yeah, but I think, like, you know, not to.
Plus, I
mean,
mean,
there's definitely like
we can't. Yeah, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say we can't like live on revenge. You know?
No. Yeah, and that's
We have to work for ourselves.
yeah, that's what I want to say is like we can definitely we have a lot that it's right to be angry at those boomers and to want justice. However, we still have to, even if the boomers get their justice, and even if all of that comes to pass, like we still have a nation to rebuild. Wherever you are, if you're an American, if you're Canadian, if you're whatever kind of white person that you are, right, wherever you are, we have our nations to rebuild, and so we have to obviously look at the way that the boomers and if your parents are Gen X or whatever, how they've failed how they failed us. But then from that knowledge, we have to actually do something. We actually have to rebuild what we've lost. We have to rebuild our family values. We have to rebuild harmonious, empathetic relationship with our children. We have to rebuild camaraderie and masculine brotherhood. We have to rebuild all of that, and that's going to take a lot of effort. So let's observe what happened in the past and learn from it. But you don't want to get stuck on it, so that you're not doing what you should be, so that there can be a future. That's empathy. Is you kind of have to be conscious of every aspect of it. Don't get lost in one over all the others.